أهلا بكم في الدورة السادسة من عرب نت. نحن الآن في منتدى تكنولوجيا الإعلان والإعلام. راح يكون عبارة عن حوارات متعددة. الحوار الأول راح يكون عن الضوء على التقنيات الصاعدة أو تسليط الضوء على التقنيات الصاعدة التي تغير من تجربة العملاء. راح يكون عبارة عن جلسات أخرى موجودة حاليا في القاعات الأخرى. قاعة A منتدى التحول الرقمي، قاعة C الاستثمار والابتكار. أتمنى منكم تحميل التطبيق راح يكون فيه محاورين ومتحدثين اللي راح يكونوا في الجلسات القادمة في هذا المنتدى أو المنتديات الأخرى الموجودة حاليا في المنتدى. طيب، راح يكون معنا المحاور لهذه الجلسة الأستاذة ريتا مخول، مدير التحرير في ArabNet.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us. So, as you're all aware, technology is moving quite fast today. Sometimes it's really hard to keep up. Advancements in technology have disrupted nearly every industry, and the advertising industry is no exception. With greater smartphone penetration and new technologies, we've witnessed a complete transformation in the consumer journey. So what this panel will be exploring is the customer experience advancements that have enabled by technologies that are already here, and those that are on the horizon, and those with the greatest potential. Joining us on this panel today is Mr. Michel Malcon, who's the Chief Operating Officer at DMS, Ahmed Sadoudi, Head of the Chevrolet brand, Middle East, at General Motors, and Mahdi Al-Husseini, Head of Marketing at Mayar Foods. Please help me welcome them. Thank you. So, all right, we're going to jump right in. We've got 40 minutes and a whole lot to cover. So if we can start off with you, Michel, since you've got an overview of the entire industry and what's taking place. I'd like to understand, from your perspective, from where you stand, what are the top technology trends that are disrupting the advertising industry, in particular to consumer engagement?
Right. So there are plenty of, so like you said in the beginning of your, in your introduction, technology is moving in such a way that not a single company nor a single publisher is able to catch up with. Every 6 months or every 3 months, there's something new that is happening. So from a user experience, I think that's great because the users are interacting and engaging with this technology in a way that sometimes the brands and the media companies can't really understand. And that's great from that sort of experiences. But that's creating big gaps with companies or marketeers and publishers to see how we can adapt to those changes and to those technologies. And it's not easy to do that because once you need to learn on those technologies, but also you need to adapt and see how those technologies can affect your business. Specifically, so the bigger you are, the difficult it becomes to integrate. So what we see today in terms of technologies, I think AI is or deep learning is something that is shaping, in a positive way. It's facilitating the processes, the optimization of a lot of the structures the companies have and the marketers have. But it's something new that we need to learn about. VR and AR, I know it started really slow, but it's catching up, specifically on AR. AR is, we're experimenting a lot of the banners today from an augmented reality point of view, and we're trying to embrace or trying to catch up with the user experiences and bringing them something new to interact with the content and with the publishers. But also, in programmatic, there are plenty of new technologies that we're seeing, and they're affecting the way we transact and the way we can engage with those with the users. And then, 2 weeks ago, Amazon, for example, launched some new services where it basically it's going to disrupt the whole broadcast idea. So through cloud, they're using now. They're enabling a lot of the user-generated publishers. We call them publishers now. To elevate their production to a TV level in cheap ways. So this is a space that we're watching very closely and see how we're gonna look at it. But so, this is what we think we're gonna be watching, and I think the most important one and the ones that keeps me awake at night is voice-enabled marketing. I think in those little machines that are infiltrating in every single home are don't necessarily force the users to go to a homepage or to type.
Right.
And we need to figure out, and we started thinking how we can the new version of content, how would that fit in with that conversation between man and machine? So that's what we are seeing from a global point of view.
So the 5 you've mentioned are artificial intelligence, more or less deep learning, VR, AR, virtual reality and augmented reality, new technologies in programmatic, broadcast, and do you call it broadcast? No.
Well, the new era of publishing, I think.
The new era of
disruption
publishing
of
and
publishing, yeah.
voice-enabled devices or marketing. Now these are all like fine and dandy when we look at them at a list, but what is actually, looking in the region, what has been maturing today? What do you think has the most potential to also be implemented throughout the region right now?
Okay, so what we're doing, for example, at DMS is that we've started integrating deep learning into everything that we do. And that's helping us because when you reach a specific scale, you need to lean on the machine in order to start making things, making sense of things. So when we talk about programmatic, for example, we're trying to experiment how we optimize, the conversions programmatically. How can we increase and maximize yield from every single format that we have? If you look at it from an audience point of view, and we're trying to see how we can optimize the DMP servicing and how we can start creating segments that we don't necessarily think are logical as humans. Okay. So we're trying to look into the unstructured data that we have and mixing it with the structured one and come up with segments that that makes conversion sense and not logical sense. I don't know if I'm being clear on that, but so that's one. 3, when it comes to augmented reality, I think like I mentioned, we're already through DMS Labs, for example, and this is something that we would like to explore with some of the clients. See how without any extra equipment, how can you, when you click on a banner, how do you see that? How do you take that experiment of a specific product or experience into that interaction? So we're doing a lot of these things on the ground, but they're experimental, obviously. The challenge is, so there's a big gap between what is glittery and from a tech point of view, right, and what is reality, and so yes, we're always can keep up with this, but in reality you need to also make revenues. So when we create sophisticated products and we try to pitch it to clients or to agencies, not necessarily all clients do have the capabilities to adopt to these technologies. So if you take, for example, dynamic creative, so basically personalization of messages. At the second you identify specific segments, and then push a personalized message using dynamic creative technology.
Right.
You need to, in that process, so on paper that sounds really great, but in reality, when you want to start talking to the agency and then come up with, 1,500 different creative to actually have these conversations personalized is a pain, and not a lot of agencies do have the capabilities to do that, nor the client have necessarily not the manpower, but
The resources.
the quickness of making those decisions happen when you're looking at 1,500 different type of
Right.
messages that he needs to approve.
Before we delve in deeper into like challenges, I'd like to get understanding from Ahmed and Mehdi on what you guys have been doing, especially you both come from very different industries, the automotive industry and the FMCG industry. I'd like to get understanding on how you've been leveraging data on personalizing customer engagement. What have you been doing to date?
Sure. First of all, assalamu alaikum. Really honored to be here to talk to all of you about advertising and also how digital media is growing in the region. And for you who are, young entrepreneurs or small brands, you have to start with better understanding of your customer. The more you know about your customer, the easier your job becomes in really understanding how to reach them. How to reach them and how to convince them or walk them down the purchase funnel, as we say it. Looking at data, we have in our organizations, and when we interact with customers, there's a wealth of knowledge that we have about these customers. You got to ask yourself, how do I use all of that information, to better my go-to-market? And the simple answer is that, just draw a picture of who your best customer is. Try to, look for lookalikes, if you will. If you understand who your best customer is and where to reach them, so understand what's their highest affinity in terms of mediums that they're using. Is it social? Is it TV? Is it digital? Or is it mobile? Is it everything all together? That really helps you deliver a more concise marketing go-to-market strategy with minimizing the wastage of your scarce marketing resource, especially for younger brands and entrepreneurs. You don't have money growing on trees, and it's really important to make sure that you get the highest return on your investment. So data really helps, especially on digital because it's measurable, to really understand audience signals. Michelle was talking about audience signals, understand their digital footprint, what happens to these users after they leave your website. How can I retarget these folks? Someone watching a video on YouTube, a long form 3-minute video, gives a signal that this customer or this user has a positive opinion about your brand. So from a retargeting perspective, that's the first guy you want to talk to, or girl, to really, because they have a positive opinion about your brand.
Yes, in FMCG, I'll talk about more the consumer. So maybe 10, 20 years, TV was a big thing. Now everything on TV is happening on digital. And Saudi and the UAE are one of the top 2 countries in the world in being connected, internet penetration, in digital, and also in mobile. When mobile started, 80% of all ads or consumers were going through mobile versus a desktop or a laptop. When that happened, of course, all the marketing communication, what we used to do on TV is now on digital. Of course, like the guys were saying, it's more efficient, you spend less and you target more. So of course, with programmatic in the US or in Europe, they target everyone based on details. Details means that the age, what they like, what they don't like, they see them on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, or in different places. They follow them based on their preferences. So when you see an ad that is customized to you, you feel that this brand is talking to you. So brands like Oreo or in P&G or Unilever or Nestle, they target to this extent. So that's why digital now overtook TV globally, and still in Saudi it's kind of a challenge between the different companies. So the more the company or the brand is mature, you see more digital. The optimized kind of thing in Saudi is 30% digital versus still a TV. With that also you customize to the millennials, which is 70% of the consumers in Saudi Arabia. And all of these guys are online 24/7, of course, with different social platforms. So all the technologies mentioned are nice things to do in Saudi Arabia, but not yet mature based on clients or brands or maturity, and also because of the cost. So the cost can be handled by big brands or big companies in the US or in Europe, because also they don't have other places to grow. While in Saudi or in the region, there's maybe cheaper options to go to. Sometimes big brands use these technologies in an activation. So something to create buzz. You see a machine like in Coca-Cola and different brands, they have a machine that talks to different people in different parts of the world. That's something which is nice. It happens like in one place, and then you see it on digital going viral, reaching 20 or 30 or 40 million views. So yeah, so FMCG is still simple, but still also in ROI, what the guys were mentioning, that every brand needs to optimize their ROI. So digital helps a lot in that area.
What I've been seeing overall is a lot of discussion on the challenges that you're facing. Is it, and from what I'm understanding, it's the difficulty of companies or corporations catching up with the technology. And this is more on the corporate end or the brand's end. But what about, like, consumers are ready? You're talking about 70% of the population being millennials. They're ready, they're hungry, they want this. How are you planning on tackling this? Are there plans or solutions or advice you can give?
So I can
Sure.
answer this, but I'd just like to clarify one thing. So when you look at, so we're moving into a solution type of, from a planning point of view, we're moving away from a channel per se to a actual solution across different media touch points. And of course, digital has disrupted everything and just gave TV a run for their money and print a run for their money, etc. But the new era of planning is, and this is where technology come in to help us creating attribution modeling to see what works where to what audience.
Right.
So there's not a single way of doing things right in this, because everything is just a mix of different things. So all the walls have broken, and now within and you can't, for example, as a human being or as a user, you don't say, now I'm reading a print magazine and I've got that impression and now I'm going to do something else and I move. Within you reading a magazine, you get interrupted by a WhatsApp message, by probably a chat conversation, by all sorts of intersections, and your mind is moving in seconds from a print impression to a engagement on social, and so back and forth. You're doing that process. So from a planning point of view, it's becoming more and more complex. And the way you need to simplify it is using the tech in order to see what works, what channel works at what stage of your mindset within whatever the user is doing. So I don't necessarily agree that everything is shifted from one end to the other, or the other way around. So today, if you're looking at your target audience, be it millennial or you need to segment those target audiences as well from a car point of view. Not each each segment of that audience look at that brand differently. So if I'm a millennial,
And
I
at
will
the
look
different models within the brand.
exactly. I look at that car for probably because of its color or utility. If I'm going through a midlife crisis, I will look into the car from horsepowers and and how pretty it is. So it's the same car, but the story changes. So, and when you start looking at who's buying from those segments, then you define through the tech, through a proper attribution model of who is engaging to what from which channel, and you put weightage according to those channels through your budget. And sometimes you'll find a specific segment when it comes to millennials, for example, their weightage should be more skewed to digital, but in other cases it should be probably skewed to other medium. And so, and this is this is the message that we need to send across, and rather than TV or print is dead or social is gaining power and influencer are doing this. So I think in today's world, the complexity of the market cannot allow us to say you need to have an open mind to how we look at things with the help of technology, of course.
Right. Can we look at how technology has been impacting the different stages of a purchase cycle, and how to know, or I don't know if you can give examples of stuff you've done before on what technologies to use at the different purchase cycles, or what can...
So before we get into that, I really want to answer the question that you asked in terms of how to adapt or adopt, if you will, in today's ecosystem. For the leaders in the room, marketing or organization leaders, you got to think of how to innovate. You got to stay sharp. So you have to have at least 10 or 20% of your own personal time and your team's time to really better understand yourself, your competitors, and most importantly, your customer. Because the needs, in terms of evolution, has been growing at a very fast pace. And if you don't have your eyes and ears to the market, you're already lost. So you really need to identify people in your organization, large or small, and including yourself, on how to innovate, how to think big, think 10x, don't think 1 or 2, because in today's environment, it is extremely tough. And focus. You need to really focus on the mediums that will yield the best results. Don't take a media plan or $1 million, let's say you have $1 million to spend, and put 10% on print, 10% here. It needs to be based on what Michelle, you have to look at, there's some science behind it. You need to really spend your money where your customer is, or fish where the fish are, and also make sure when you buy in those mediums, you buy deep. Own it. Don't trickle. You don't have 2 or 3% share of voice. Have 20 or 30% share of voice. And that's how you achieve brand love and also top of mind. And your message needs to be really contextual based on audience signals and what have you. So if there's any takeaway, it's just think big, think of innovation, and keep your eyes always on your competitor and your customer.
Yep, and to build on that, just to clarify, the percentages I was mentioning was for FMCG. So it depends on the industry. So some industries do not use maybe TV. Some industries are 100% on digital. And same thing for the maturity of the brand. I have 10 brands in my company. 3 brands we support, the rest we don't. But even within these 3, 1 can afford to be on TV with digital. The other 2 cannot afford, so they are 100% on digital. So this is something like Ahmed was mentioning, depends on your customer. Your customer can be always on digital, and he never sees TV. So you should not spend anything on TV. The other thing is the maturity of the brand. And then this is what the guys were mentioning, I also built on it, that you optimize your spends. So based on how niche is your customer, because lots of entrepreneurs are into a very small segment of the population, which is either a very expensive product or something that is different than the masses. So there are FMCG brands which is 150 years old, but there are lots of local industries that starts like 1 year or 2 years, and they have something that the big guys don't have. And that's why people want to change, want to eat different types of cupcakes, or want to eat different types of biscuits with this flavor, with that flavor, or any kind of service. So services are not physical. So that's also maybe 100% on digital. So it depends on your business. You have to customize your media plans, your spends, of course, with the different size of budgets you have. So yeah, the challenges are based on the category, the service or the product, and of course the cost of it. So yeah, I was mentioning some of these things are nice, but they may be very expensive. That's why some big companies use it in activations that happens one place in the world and goes viral. But then in other cases, which we use here in Saudi Arabia, which is lots of detailed targeting in digital, in different platforms. And of course, everybody knows these platforms. Each one has its pros and cons. So some are for sharing, some are for just pictures or videos, and some you don't know the numbers or the tracking for it. That's why it depends on the relationship between the client, the agency, and the influencer, for example.
I want to go back to our original topic on the different technologies that are currently out there. And I really want to sit and explore how has it been impacting your purchase cycle? How has it been impacting your communication and how does it enhance your engagement with customers and customer experience? Sorry, I'm customer and consumer merged together. So, but please, if I can get perspectives on those as well.
So digital really disrupted the purchase funnel. Looking at the adoption. 5 years ago, it used to take the average car shopper about 5.5 months to really make a decision. Now with the introduction of video, video on demand, online, in terms of the access to information, we're seeing in Saudi Arabia the adoption is actually 1.5 months, and in markets like UAE is 2.5 months. And that really comes down to the level of confidence a consumer has to come to that decision. Buying a car is the second most complex decision you'll ever make after buying a house. Consumers want to make sure that they are making the right choice. And with the use of video in general, really helps us throughout the funnel, whether it's long-form videos or snacks and bites, as Google likes to call them, which is snackable content that you can keep retargeting that same customer to really walk them down the funnel, right? And expect or anticipate any of their objections and serve it to them, to bring them down to the lower stage, and then eventually, closing the deal. There is some point where it's going to go from a digital experience to a showroom experience, if you will, and that handoff and the time from digital to brick and mortar needs to be very short, because not only they're shopping you, but they're shopping 2 or 3 other brands. So
have you started with that transition yet?
Of course, absolutely.
Can you give us some examples of that?
I mean, some of the examples is click to call. When you're on Google, you can just click to call. That makes it easy for customers instead of waiting for you to call them, or hand raisers, if you will. They're requesting a quote or requesting a test drive, and we track those by the minute. We need to make sure that our response is in minutes, not hours or days, because we know that our fellow competitors are very eager. 95% of a car shopping experience starts online. 50% of our budget as General Motors is going to be on digital. In 2018, it's 38% in 2017. So Michelle is liking that one. So that's, in a nutshell, how it works in an automotive ecosystem.
But you're still at the comparison stage of the cycle. How about when it comes to the purchase cycle? Are any of the technologies impacting that?
At the end of the day, there still needs to be, the old customers. Again, it's a complex purchase. They want to make sure that it is the right car for them. So they're going to have a test drive, if you will, a walk around. So if you're doing a walk around, you can use beacons, to really, or use the car as real estate to to have, the sales consultant or even a customer with the lack of sales consultant actually look at what really makes that car unique. In some cases, the experience can actually be customized as well, depending on the purchase drivers. So we ask them, what do you look for in a car? He'd say, oh, your space or convenience or technology. And our pitch, our walk around, will be customized based on these category drivers and purchase considerations. And you can achieve that on digital as well. There are virtual test drives, there are augmented reality test drives right now, locally and globally.
Regionally?
Yes.
Okay, so you've been trying out VR and AR, both?
Yes.
Beacons as well, you said?
So beacons are less popular because of the investment with it, and it really takes away that human interaction. And in our business, when you have a face-to-face with the customer, you really want to close the deal. You don't want to leave it to, technology. There is that still interaction that we need to make sure that is happening on the ground. In regards to exciting consumers about our products and brand, VR plays a really big role because they can be sitting on their couch at home, building, the car of their dreams online, and that really gives us insights about what they look for in a car. Is it, bigger wheels? Is it this color? Is it sunroof? What level of content they're looking for, and their ability to pay for it.
You have been experimenting with chatbots as well?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm just trying to wrap my head around, because Michelle in the beginning mentioned 5 different technology trends. You've already mentioned 3 of them.
Yeah, so chatbots are really important, especially on social. When someone comes out and asks, oh, what's the price of this car? Or does it come in different colors? Or what level of engines do we have? Chatbots, provide, fast answers, and you don't have to have, the customer waiting, for that answer. But then when it comes to buying signals, this is where we need to hand it off to a person.
Right.
So that can influence that customer, for a showroom visit, or we bring the showroom to them, or we can send them a sales consultant or a test drive specialist, if you will.
It's also because most consumers still prefer the human interaction when it comes to that, especially when it comes to something as a large purchase as a car or a home.
Yeah.
Whereas I think in the FMCG sector, it's a complete different story. The purchase cycle also has possibly, Mehdi, if you can give us your point of view, because from my understanding, it's probably gotten a lot shorter, a lot quicker, a lot faster, and the interaction's a lot different than it would be in an automotive sector.
Yes, of course, because in FMCG you have products ranging from 1 riyal to 100 riyals or more. So that first of all, the funnel, like maybe Michelle was mentioning, it didn't become a funnel anymore. It became overlapping, and then the media you see is overlapping again. So traditionally, you used to have awareness and then trial and then purchase. But nowadays, with the digital world, people hear about something through a digital form, and then they decide, yes, since this guy is using it, I'm going to use it. Either someone I trust, like my mother or my cousin or someone or a friend or an influencer. The funnel changed, so the purchases are now depending on the personality of the consumer or the customer, it changes. So the digital also in the traditional way, you want to be aware of a brand. So that's why lots of companies are advertising on digital and different platforms. But then when the shorter time is because of the information. So anyone have a mobile can go into a shop and just Google or search about the brand he wants to buy. And then he finds out lots of different promotions. He can now buy it also on e-commerce. E-commerce is here. But of course, it's still smaller than other places because different reasons. Like in Saudi, the fuel is still cheaper than other places in the world. People want to go out and see things physically, like maybe Ahmed was mentioning. Still, people want to go in families. They go to purchase. But then even when they go, everyone has his or her mobile, and they check on what is this brand? Why do I buy this brand? So maybe the speed is kind of the same, but decision making is faster with lots of more data.
Okay.
So the data impacts the decisions. E-commerce plays a different role that people who are very busy, who don't want to go out, either singles or maybe older people, they don't want to go out at all, or they're busy traveling for business, for example. So they're at home, they order online, things come to their home. Also, what happened with Souk.com, for example, when they started, they were facing an issue of credit cards, because the credit card penetration in Saudi Arabia is not really high.
It's across the region, actually.
Across the region?
And
okay.
it's all e-commerce players.
Okay. For this, the solution for that was cash on delivery. So lots of other newcomers started their businesses online with cash on delivery. Uber or Careem also had these issues, and they started cash on delivery. That impacted the purchase cycle also for FMCG. Information technology helped in these comparisons. Brands who are available on these platforms are better suited to be chosen or to have a higher market share. So yeah, the funnel changed. Competition is different than before, and of course, lots of more data.
So, just
Yes,
once
of
I know
course.
that I saw him. The time is finished. So just one. So data is obviously extremely important, right? So, but we're now mentioning the quality of data as well. So when you start defining the the purchase funnel of every single brand, obviously it differs, and like the gentleman were saying, which leads to the quality of data. So today, when you look at the platforms and they identify, fashionistas or whatever segments they identify it, it's very important that these are not run by machines but run by humans, so they can basically integrate the quality of the data and the life cycle of those cookies depending on the customer journey. So an FMCG cookie should be always refreshed, probably daily if it's a yogurt product, to 2 to 3 months if it's a car product, and that's extremely important. So, which brings us to how you're going to collect these data, and the data is collected in so many different ways. And from a publisher point of view, because content really matters, because content is relevant, because it's produced by local people, that's extremely important, and to have those signals to give you the right insights on what's going on what context this data is collected. So this is the next level of if you want, of what really works from what doesn't, and what kind of sources of data are you collecting.
But data is also one of the challenges a lot of marketeers face, isn't it? Like the trouble in collecting all the data and how data is collected, and the detailed data. Am I right?
Right. Yeah. So data mining is becoming more and more important. I think Michelle touched on quality of data. I think a lot of our effort and focus and our budgets actually needs to be making sure that we have clean data rather than data that we need to. You don't want to be guesstimating. You need to be based on science. So again, my recommendation is that spend some time on really understanding the quality of data you're getting and mine those insights. I mean, all of your campaigns needs to be insights first, and it based on a real human insight. Those are the campaigns or the ideas that really stick and get us the recall that we want as advertisers.
Right. We're actually over time, but I'm not gonna. Okay.
Okay.
If anybody has any questions to any of the panelists, they're about to get off stage. Just hijack them, and they're probably going to be around for a while. So,
Right.
learn their faces and chase after them, stalk them. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I want to
you.
thank you all.
Thank you so
Thank you
much
very
for
much.
having us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.